My girlfriend laughed. "You're too insecure to check my phone." I replied, "You're right." Then I synced her hidden photo album to the smart TV during her family dinner. Her father smashed the screen after her secrets got exposed. I, 32 male, have always been a quiet man. Most people mistake quiet for weakness. They've always been wrong. I'm an architect. I like clean lines, logical progressions, and things that fit together just so. For 3 years, I thought Jessica, 29, was the final, perfect piece of my life's design. She was vibrant, a little chaotic, a whirlwind of social energy that balanced my structured world. I loved her for it. I was so sure I was just weeks away from proposing. The ring, a simple, elegant platinum band with a single perfect sapphire, her birthstone, was nestled in my sock drawer. The first crack in the foundation appeared subtly. A late night here, a whispered phone call there. When I'd ask, she'd flash that brilliant smile and call me silly. "You know I only have eyes for you, baby." She had a way of making you feel like an idiot for doubting her. The fissure widened a few weeks ago. We were on the couch, watching some mind-numbing reality show. Her phone buzzed, and she snatched it with a speed that felt practiced. I saw a name flash. Richard. I didn't know a Richard. "Who's that?" I asked, keeping my tone light. Her fingers danced across the screen, a blur of practiced evasion. "Just a work thing. Super boring." She didn't look at me. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. The architect in me hates an unsolved problem. I walked past her, asleep in our bed, and saw her phone on the nightstand. I'd never touched her phone. Not once. We'd had the conversation early on. "Privacy is sexy," she'd said, and I'd agreed. But this felt different. This felt like a structural flaw that could bring the whole building down. I didn't pick it up. Instead, I did something the logical part of my brain insisted upon. I sat at my desk and thought. Jessica was tech-savvy, but also lazy. She loved Apple products, and she loved the seamless convenience of iCloud. Just last month, I'd upgraded our shared storage to the 2 TB family plan. I remembered telling her it was great because it would now automatically back up everything from all our devices. She'd just nodded, probably not listening. It occurred to me that an album she thought was hidden on her phone might not be hidden from the cloud I paid for. The next evening, the tension was thick enough to be a load-bearing wall. She was getting ready for her parents' 35th anniversary dinner. It was a big deal. Her father, Joseph, is a man carved from granite and old money, a patriarch in the truest sense. Her mother, Sarah, is his silent, impeccably dressed shadow. Her brother, Thomas, 31, is a carbon copy of his father, just with more gel in his hair and a thinner veneer of civility. They were, to put it mildly, a family that prized appearances above all else. "You seem quiet," Jessica said, adjusting a diamond earring. She looked stunning in a dark green dress that matched her eyes, the same eyes that had looked so shifty the night before. "Just thinking," I said. She sauntered over, wrapping her arms around my neck. Her perfume smelled like expensive lies. "Don't you trust me?" It was the perfect opening, a door she unlocked herself. "I feel like you're hiding something," I said, my voice even. She laughed, a bright, tinkling sound that suddenly sounded like shattering glass. "Oh, honey, don't be that guy. You're too insecure to check my phone, right? You know you wouldn't like what you'd find if you went looking for trouble." She meant it as a threat, a challenge. "You don't have the guts." I looked her straight in the eye. A long, silent moment passed. Then I gave her a small, sad smile. "You're right." Her whole body relaxed. She thought she'd won. She patted my cheek. "Good boy. Now come on, we can't be late. Daddy hates tardiness." The entire drive there, a cold, calm certainty settled over me. The architect was in his office. Blueprints spread out. This wasn't a demolition. It was a controlled, precise dismantling. Dinner was at their sprawling, ostentatiously decorated home. Gilt frames, heavy drapery, the suffocating scent of potpourri and judgment. Joseph held court at the head of the table, pontificating about fiscal responsibility while wearing a watch that could fund a small nation. Thomas bragged about a recent promotion. A story I knew for a fact was embellished because he'd complained to Jessica just last week that he'd been passed over. I was a model guest. I nodded, I smiled, I complimented Sarah's, probably catered, Dauphinoise potatoes. I was the perfect supportive boyfriend. Jessica was in her element, basking in her family's glow, occasionally shooting me a look that was 1 part affection, 2 parts condescension. the look you give a well-behaved pet. After the main course, Joseph announced, "Time for the toast," and Sarah has put together a little slideshow of our years together. This was it, the moment I'd been waiting for. Sarah fumbled with the smart TV remote. "Oh dear, I can never get this newfangled thing to work." "Let me, Sarah," I said, standing up. My heart was a steady, rhythmic drum. Not fast, just present. I took the remote. The TV was the same brand as ours. The interface was identical. I navigated to the photo-sharing app. It was already logged into our shared cloud account. Of course it was. Jessica had probably set it up for them, using her credentials for the sake of convenience. "Here we go," I said, my voice clear and steady. I could feel Jessica's eyes on me. She was smiling, oblivious. I opened the photos, and there, nestled right next to Sarah and Joseph's 35th, was another album. An album innocuously titled Fun Times. The one she'd carelessly created, not realizing our new plan would broadcast it to the cloud. I selected the album. I hit play slideshow, and I sat back down. The first photo filled the 75-inch screen. It was Jessica, in our bed, wearing my favorite t-shirt and nothing else. But she wasn't alone. She was laughing, looking up at a man who was most definitely not me. Richard. His arm was draped possessively over her shoulder. A smug grin on his face. He was Thomas's best friend. I'd met him at their last Christmas party. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. The next photo, Jessica and Richard on a boat, kissing. The date stamp in the corner was from a weekend she'd told me she was at a yoga retreat with girlfriends. Another, a close-up of a hotel receipt, a very expensive hotel, paid for by a credit card, I now realized was linked to the joint account we had for household expenses. Then came the screenshots. Vicious, mocking text exchanges between Jessica and Thomas. "Thomas, is he still buying the work thing excuse?" Jessica, "Totally. He's too sweet. It's almost sad. Dad would kill you if he knew you were messing around with Richard behind the architect's back. He actually likes this one." Jessica, "What Daddy doesn't know won't hurt him. Besides, Richard is way more fun. And his trust fund kicks in next year." The photos kept coming. Dozens of them. A curated gallery of her betrayal. There was even one of her trying on a wedding dress, with a text to a friend that read, "Practicing for the big day. Just need to decide on the groom, lol." The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the soft, digital whoosh of the slideshow transitioning from one damning image to the next. Sarah's hand was pressed to her mouth, her face a mask of horror. Thomas had gone a startling shade of pale, looking like a ghost in a polo shirt. Jessica was frozen, her face contorted in a silent scream. But it was Joseph who finally moved. He stared at the screen, at a particularly graphic photo of his daughter and Richard in a hotel room, his face turning a deep, terrifying crimson. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He let out a guttural roar, a sound of pure, primal fury. He stood up, his chair crashing to the floor. He grabbed the nearest heavy object, a bronze statue of a bull, ironically symbolizing a bull market, and with a strength I wouldn't have thought possible, he hurled it at the television. The screen didn't just crack, it imploded. A shower of glass and liquid crystal erupted, and the images of his daughter's secret life vanished into a spiderweb of blackness. The room descended into chaos. Sarah was sobbing. Thomas was trying to stammer out an explanation. Jessica was just sitting there, shaking, tears streaming down her face, finally looking at me with an expression of pure, unadulterated hatred. I didn't say a word. I simply stood up, placed my napkin neatly on the table, and walked out of the house. As I closed the door behind me, I heard the first real shouts begin. The performance was over. The consequences were just beginning, and I felt, for the first time in a long time, perfectly calm. Update 1. First off, thank you for the comments and DMs. It's validating. For a while there, living in the quiet fog of suspicion, I started to feel like I was the one with the problem. The past 48 hours have been a masterclass in deflection and entitled rage. The architect in me has been taking meticulous notes. I went home from the dinner party from hell and did 3 things immediately. I packed a bag, everything I would need for the foreseeable future. Clothes, work laptop, toiletries, and the ring box from my sock drawer. I am now staying with a friend. I logged into our shared cloud account and downloaded the entire Fun Times album to a secure, password-protected hard drive. Evidence. I consulted a lawyer friend for an hour to ensure every next step I took was precisely by the book. The phone calls began at 7:01 a.m. First Jessica, then Thomas, then Joseph. I ignored them all. Their texts were a predictable mix of fury, threats, and feigned victimhood. The apartment is mine. I owned it for 2 years before I met Jessica. Her name isn't on the deed or mortgage. However, as my lawyer friend confirmed, after 3 years she has established tenancy rights. I can't just throw her out. So I'm removing her with legal precision. Yesterday, I had a process server formally deliver a 30-day notice to vacate to her at the apartment. It's an official, legally binding document. It gives her a generous, state-mandated timeline to find a new place to live. This afternoon, I sent a single simple email to Jessica, with Joseph and Thomas CC'd. Subject: Notice belongings and financial reconciliation. Jessica, as per the legal notice you received today, you have 30 days to vacate my property. I trust this is ample time to arrange for new accommodations. To facilitate your move, I will be in the apartment on evenings and weekends to pack my own personal items and prepare the space for a deep cleaning and painting once you have left. I will give you 24 hours notice before each visit. During this time, I will require the space to be quiet and free of any guests. I have also changed the Wi-Fi password, as it is an account in my name and not a required utility. I will not be sharing the new one. Please also find attached a spreadsheet detailing $4,782 in charges on the joint household account for non-household expenses. This includes hotel stays and cash withdrawals made on dates corresponding to your affair. I have included the statements for your reference. I expect payment within 30 days. Finally, a gold locket belonging to my grandmother is missing. I believe you know its whereabouts. I have a receipt from a local pawn shop for an item matching its description. If it is not returned within 48 hours, I will be filing a police report for theft. This is the last time I will be communicating with you directly. Regards, David. She thought she had a month to relax. She's wrong. She has a month of living in a construction zone. Tonight, I start packing the living room. On Saturday, the painters are coming to give me a quote, and they'll need to inspect every room. Her home is now my project site. The quiet enjoyment she's legally entitled to will be met, but it will be a very, very quiet enjoyment indeed, punctuated by the sound of packing tape. The locket was pawned. I confirmed it. She betrayed me, and then she stole from my history. That was the bigger mistake. I'm not just evicting a tenant. I'm methodically dismantling a life she built on my foundation and with my money. The legal way. Update 2. The past week has been loud. Jessica's response to my email and the start of my packing project has been to scream, cry, and accuse me of being a monster. It's all happening via text messages to my friend as I blocked her. Apparently, me methodically boxing up the living room while listening to a podcast on brutalist architecture is psychological warfare. The real fireworks, however, came from Thomas. Thomas and I work for the same large international firm. Different departments, but under the same corporate umbrella with a very strict code of conduct. He thought this was his arena. Monday morning, I received a meeting invitation from an HR manager named Susan. Subject: follow-up discussion. I knew Thomas had made his move. I spent the hour before the meeting printing out my evidence. I walked into the conference room. Susan was alone. She was professional, her expression neutral. "Thanks for coming in," she said. "I'm following up on a complaint filed by your colleague Thomas. He has made some serious allegations regarding your conduct outside of work, claiming you are creating a hostile environment for him." I nodded. I anticipated this. She asked me to give my side of the story. I calmly explained the situation with Jessica, framing it purely in factual terms. My former domestic partner engaged in a long-term affair. The conflict is with her. Thomas has chosen to insert himself into the matter. Then I laid out my case against him. Thomas has been the one creating a hostile environment. He has sent me threatening texts. He has been slandering me to mutual colleagues. Last week he cornered me in the company cafeteria and called me a psycho prick. I have the names of 3 witnesses. I pushed a thin folder across the table. I wasn't going to bring this to HR, as I prefer to handle my private life privately. But since Thomas has officially opened this door, I would now like to file a formal harassment complaint against him. Inside the folder were printouts of his texts, a timeline of his slanderous comments with names of people he'd said them to, and the witness list from the cafeteria incident. It was a clean, logical, architectural presentation of his own wrongdoing. Susan's neutral expression tightened almost imperceptibly as she read. She looked up. "Thank you for this information. This is very thorough. I will be speaking with Thomas and his manager separately this afternoon. The company takes these matters very seriously." I left the meeting knowing Thomas had walked into a firewall. He thought he could use the corporate system as a weapon, not realizing it's a system built on rules and documentation, my native language. He wanted a drama. I gave HR a case file. Final update. It's been a while. The 30-day notice period expired. Jessica moved out on day 28, unable to stand another moment in a half-empty apartment with no internet. The demolition is complete, and I'm starting to survey the new landscape of my life. I promised a final update, so here it is. The court date. Predictably, only Joseph showed up to the small claims court hearing. Jessica and Thomas were nowhere to be seen. Joseph, in a suit that cost more than my entire claim, tried to have the case dismissed as a sordid domestic dispute. The judge, a no-nonsense woman who looked like she'd heard it all, was not impressed. I presented my case. The bank statements, the hotel charges, the pawn ticket, the police report for the locket, which I recovered, the invoice for the storage unit where Jessica's remaining items were now sitting. A neat, tidy timeline. Joseph argued the money was a gift. The judge looked at the evidence. "Mr. Joseph's last name," she said, her voice cutting through his bluster. "Your daughter's defense is that these funds were a gift. However, the evidence clearly shows they were systematically withdrawn from a joint account intended for household expenses to facilitate a clandestine affair. This court does not consider that a gift. It considers it a misappropriation of funds for which she is fully liable." I won. The judgment was for the full amount. Joseph wrote a check right there, his hand shaking with rage. He slammed it on the table. "I hope you're happy?" he hissed. "I'm not," I said, picking it up. "But the books are balanced." The professional fallout. Thomas's HR gambit backfired spectacularly. The internal investigation, backed by my documentation and witness testimony, found him in breach of the company's code of conduct and harassment policies. But the real blow was Richard. Richard's family, who run a rival business to Joseph's, were clients of our firm. A lucrative account managed by Thomas. When they found out their son was embroiled in a messy public scandal, not just an affair, but one that ended in a viral-worthy story of smashed TVs and legal notices, they were mortified. They valued discretion above all. They pulled their multi-million-dollar account. The loss fell directly on Thomas. He wasn't fired, but in some ways his fate was worse. He was demoted, stripped of his seniority, and now manages small-time, local accounts. For a man like Thomas, whose identity was tied to his big-shot status, it's a professional death sentence. The social collapse. The story spread, not because I said a word, but because they couldn't stop talking. They tried to paint me as the villain, but their story was full of holes. The fact that I followed a formal eviction process and won in court made me look methodical, not crazy. The pawned locket was the detail that turned everyone against Jessica. Infidelity is one thing. That kind of cold-blooded theft is another. She's reportedly back in her childhood bedroom. I saw her once, a few weeks ago, at a cafe. She was with her mother. The vibrant social butterfly was gone, replaced by someone who looked diminished, hollow. Our eyes met. There was no anger, just a vast emptiness. She looked away. I felt no victory, just the quiet finality of a project completed. I sold the apartment. Too many ghosts in the blueprints. With the money, I bought a small plot of land outside the city. I'm designing my own house, from the foundation up. It will be small, efficient, with clean lines and a lot of light. A structure I know I can trust. The sapphire ring was returned. The locket is in a safe deposit box, waiting for a new story. I'm still a quiet man. But now I know the difference between a home and a house of cards. And I know the profound satisfaction of drawing the final, clean line under a project that is well and truly finished.